All right, so here we are, week 10 edition of the A Different Kind of Power Ranking show. If you're new here, it's using analytics basically to figure out how much we expect each team to win throughout the course of a 17-game season. The way we do this is by figuring out how many points typically are added or subtracted based on how good you are at each individual position grouping. We then, see how that works, put it all together, and that's where we have the power rankings. To figure out how good each team is at each position, what we do is just the Pro Football Focus grade. It's a simple way to do it. So I created an algorithm for this. I do not determine who gets put in what category. I leave that up to PFF. That way I can kind of give my own opinions on it. Makes kind of for more interesting stuff, I think. Plus, I just don't have the resources to measure, every single team's run defense week after week. So it makes it work both ways. So, if if you have any questions, you'll probably understand some of it as we go. Also for kickers, I just use kicking percentage. But yeah, let's just jump into it and let's just start off with the power rankings going as we do now, once the comments told me to, going from bottom to top. All right, so here are the bottom 4 teams, and just so you know what you're looking at right here, so you see that there's 4 teams right here: Jaguars, Jets, Lions, and Texans. If you use the Jaguars, the top team, you just go down the line, and each category is how many wins are added due to which tier they ended up in that position group for each position group. So for the offensive line, there's 1.14 wins added. All the way over to the right, the ones in bold, this means that the Jaguars have 2.9 total wins. WE means wins earned, so that's how many wins they've earned so far through either 9 or 10 games, depending on if these teams have played 9 or 10. And then all the way over to the right, that's just how many wins they have. All the way at the bottom, that little chart there, that is just so you can keep track of and know where each team ended up in each tier in case you're curious. So for example, going back to the Jaguars, 29, 1.14 wins. You then go over toward the bottom thing and you see, okay, 1.14, that's tier 3. So that's how that chart works. Just something to make things a little easier for you. Anyways, let's get into it with number 32, the Houston Texans, which, let's be honest, they're probably going to be stuck at 32 this entire season. Not a lot to like about the Houston Texans. They get a couple of tier 4s around here, get some help with their wide receiving game. They're actually stopping to run decently well, according to PFF, which is kind of surprising because, Lovie Smith doesn't stop the run by design, seemingly. Also doesn't stop the pass by design, but that's another question. And so, not a lot going on for Houston. Also 31, the Detroit Lions, who were right there. I mean, pretty much the same thing. They at least get a win for a quarterback play. If they didn't, they would easily be in last. But other than that, not a ton else. The offensive line will give you some stuff, but they've also been banged up, which is kind of why they get a little bit of a lower grade. Number 30, the New York Jets, who, hey, they actually have tier 4 quarterback play. I think a lot of that was actually Mike White and Josh Johnson in their 2 games. But again, a lot of that was kind of due to, bad defense, I would say, more so than them playing well. But that's my opinion on it. Offensive line's played well, tier 3. It had been tier 1 and tier 2 for most of the season. Drops a bit, but still, not a great team. Not much else going for the New York Jets. Number 29, how about the Jacksonville Jaguars? Lawrence is still tier 5, which, hopefully he continues to play better as his career goes on, obviously, right? But you have some offensive line help. There's at least some pieces across the board for the Jaguars that these other teams can't really say. They only have 3 zeros on the board, but one of those is kicker. You can live with that. The other 2, though, the 2 most important, wide receiver and quarterback, so that makes it a little bit tougher. All right, next 4 here, the Pittsburgh Steelers. This algorithm has hated the Steelers all season, which does make sense because it doesn't really value pass rush the way other people probably do. Also, they currently do not have a tier 1 pass rush, according to PFF, so that makes it even tougher because usually you only really get points there if it's a tier 1 pass rush. There's a big drop off from tier 1 to tier 2 here. Run defense still very good, but not much going on offense. Still tier 5 quarterback play. Mason Rudolph certainly didn't help with that. Still tier 5 wide receiver play. So there's just not a ton to love about this Steelers team, which is why they're currently projected on a 4-win pace, even though they currently have 3.5 wins. So they'll go over that. But again, they're a team that's overperformed. That's why I like having this stuff on the right, because they probably have only earned 2.1 wins. They have 3.5, so if you've overperformed or underperformed by a win, that's significant. That's going to mean that there's something at play. It doesn't just mean luck, though, and it doesn't just mean like some issues in PFF's grading. It could also just be good coaching, because coaching isn't factored in, which I do think is a real factor with the Steelers. Mike Tomlin consistently overperforms his talent level. It's not really that big of a surprise that he's doing it this season as well. Number 27, the Giants, who still have tier 3 quarterback play from Daniel Jones, which I actually don't think is wrong, given how he's played through the sample size that we have. But there's just not a lot else. I mean, the receiving core has been banged up, even though they put a lot of resources into it. Bad offensive line. Can't really run the ball. Part of that is with the bad offensive line. And then you have the defense. Coverage has been solid, but that's pretty much all they got. So not a great team, only on pace for about 5 wins. They do have 3 already. Number 26, the team that beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but they didn't really move up at all in these rankings. They did something I like schematically, where you look at their defense, they don't cover at all, but they have a good pass rush and good run defense. So what do? Well, if you have a good front 7 in terms of stopping the run, we'll kind of, be okay with playing cover 2. I think they did it more as a, attempt at stopping Tom Brady, and it was a successful attempt. But what it can also do is it's hard to run the ball against this team, even if you're playing cover 2. So do that more frequently. I think that makes sense. Good offensive line as well for Washington. They really could use a quarterback, but, they got some work to do this offseason. Number 25, Miami Dolphins did jump up a bit, not a ton, but a bit. Tua has continued to give them a tier 3 quarterback grade, so that's good. That gets you a couple of wins right there. Defense also has some solid stuff. I think their coverage is better than tier 3, but that's where PFF has them. So they're another team. According to this, they've underperformed a little bit by 0.4 wins, so it'd be impossible to exactly perform that. But as a whole, Miami Dolphins, not a great team, but there's at least some hope here, I think. Number 24 here, the Carolina Panthers. They're a team I find very fascinating, because you look at their offense, not a lot going, but some of that has been injuries, and also they seemingly have a new quarterback, right? Cam Newton could play quarterback, and if he can just come in and be like even just a tier 4 quarterback, that helps this team a lot. A tier 3 quarterback, that might be enough to get them into the playoffs. It really might, because their defense, built with their strong coverage unit, really is good. They just need to, get some other stuff going. I don't know if Cam Newton will be enough to save this team. Quite frankly, they are a team, though, that, according to this list, has overperformed. They only have earned 3.6 wins. They've won 5 games. So maybe you could put that on coaching, and if you're a team that only has 8-win talent, honestly, that might, you get an extra win there with coaching, win 9 games. That might be a good enough record to get you into the postseason, especially with there not really being 7 playoff teams so far in the NFC that we can see. Number 23, the Indianapolis Colts right here, who, remember, they were injured a lot early on in this season. Their offensive line was gone from tier 5 to tier 3, not really with them playing better, just with them getting healthier. Tier 4 quarterback play, I think you could argue tier 3. I probably would put it in tier 3, but that's where I would have it. And that does kind of make up for some of these, they have a jump as well where they've overperformed by 1.2 wins. But I think that's part of it. They still don't cover well, and it's hard to win when you don't cover well. Stop the run well, though, so there's an upside, especially when they like to play cover 2, like we talked about with Washington. Number 22, the Atlanta Falcons. They still have solid quarterback play, although Matt Ryan has been very streaky this season. He's had a lot of ups and downs. Wide receiving core also kind of been very streaky, so that kind of goes hand in hand. There's not a ton else with this team. You at least do have that. But, not a lot else going. Hey, tier 1 kicking play, you got that going for you. They're right about where they should be. 3.7 wins earned. They've won 4 games. The Saints, another team that's overperformed a bit, and that checks out to me. Sean Payton is really good. Tier 4 quarterback play. Simeon has kind of stepped in, and I feel like he's continued to play tier 4 quarterback play. So that's been about how you would expect it. Receiving core isn't great, but again, Payton can scheme them open, so that's why you will see them probably overperform. Their defense, you have, a talented defense, good coverage, good run defense. Don't rush the passer particularly well, according to PFF, but you can get by with that if you cover well, which they do. So, Saints Currently, the algorithm doesn't love them so much, but again, you got 5 wins. You're looking like a playoff team, quite frankly, with the way the NFC is shaking out so far. All right, next 4 here, the Seattle Seahawks, who really, I mean, the algorithm has had a hard time with them just due to the, Russell Wilson gets injured and then Geno Smith plays. So they currently have tier 3 quarterback play. It's not like Russell Wilson came in and played great anyways last week, so it's kind of stuck there. So they're a team that we kind of figured would be all about their receiving core and quarterback play, and that would get them into the playoffs. Well, they haven't had great quarterback play and receiving play. Part of that is injuries. We knew the rest of the team wasn't spectacular, so none of that is a surprise, but that's really been the disappointment. They have underperformed by about a window, so you can take some solace in that if you're a Seahawks fan. Maybe there's a chance to right the ship, although part of that might be coaching as well. Although, of course, luck factors into teams overperforming or underperforming as well with that, so that's another factor. Number 19, the Kansas City Chiefs, who dropped a little bit last week, have gotten back up. They still have been, at best, mediocre in this algorithm the entire season. A big chunk of that, though, is Mahomes has not gotten that tier 1 quarterback grade that we assumed he would heading into this season. Another big part, the tier 3 wide receiving grade, because they kind of do lack, really third and fourth options. Obviously, Kelsey and Hill are amazing, but after that, what do they have? However, a good bounce back win for them. Again, they covered decently, so that's kind of, their defense has woken up a little bit. They've also overperformed according to this, but part of me wonders, could that just simply be maybe their receiving core is better than a tier 3 grade? Maybe their quarterback is better than a tier 3 grade, and it's just been inconsistent, which is why it gets that grade kind of thing. Number 18, the Chicago Bears, who have actually underperformed, but part of me wonders if this is just still with that tier 1 running grade. You get a lot of wins with that, and if you don't have it, it drops all the way back to 0.63, so big jump from 5 to 6. So if you think they have an elite running game, then this is probably where they should be, about around 8 wins. If you don't, they should probably be closer to around 6 wins. So that's how you do that. Tier 4 quarterback play, that's solid. Definitely you will take that. Fields had a really good game. PFF had him as their best quarterback the last time we saw him, which was not last week, but the week prior. But again, there's talent on this team. It's not spectacular, but I think that it's maybe even a bit overrated by the Bears. Tier 3 quarterback, I think is fine. Tier 3 offensive line, I think is fine. Tier 3 receiving core, a little bit surprising, but if, I wouldn't have it that high, I guess I'll say. But again, we're going to have disagreements. That's how this works. Number 17, the Denver Broncos, right here, who I think a lot of people would feel has overperformed. According to this, they've underperformed. But again, part of that could just be competition early on, which I think is fair. Like, is Teddy Bridgewater really a tier 3 quarterback? I don't know. He's probably closer to tier 4. But again, the rest of this kind of does check out. Like, I do think Denver could win 8 or 9 games. I don't think that's out of the question. So there's certainly some talent here for the Broncos. All right, next 4, we have the Ravens, who are one of the teams that has consistently not gotten the credit they deserved, largely due to, good offensive line, okay, but then the quarterback in the running game is still confusing to me. I don't get how I have always kind of said either Lamar's a tier 1 quarterback or the running game is tier 1, but PFF doesn't grade it that way. So because of that, the Ravens are just a team that they don't get the credit they deserve due to the algorithm, so that's a little asterisk in the algorithm. I think the Ravens probably should be a bit higher. That being said, I pretty much think every other grade here is fair, so there's 6 win total despite only 4.8 wins earned. It's probably closer to 6 wins than 4.8. Number 15, you have the Chargers, who I'm a little surprised I think Herbert fell from tier 1 to tier 2. Herbert's been good, but this team is a bit Herbert dependent. Good offensive line, like that. Solid receiving core, not spectacular. I think that's fair. And their coverage unit is good. I wonder how much better it would be if they could stop the run at all. That would maybe make things a little bit easier on them. They don't have to carry as much of a load. And part of it is they don't stop the run by design. But still, they're, right on the money. They've earned 5 wins. They have 5 wins. So there you go. That's where the Chargers are. Number 14, how about the 49ers? They jumped up a bit. Big chunk of it is, okay, so they have that tier 1 offensive line, tier 4 quarterback, which it had been tier 5 at a certain point in the season, gets back up to a much more, I think, fair tier 4 grade. And then the receiving core jumping all the way up to tier 1. So PFF has always kind of loved the 49ers receiving core, and with Deebo Samuel and those guys, that makes things easier. Also tier 2 coverage unit, so that's what's getting them currently to 10.4 total wins projected over 17 games, which is 5.5 wins earned so far. They only have 4. Have they underperformed? Probably not. I just think that the receiving core probably isn't tier 1. So I think that's probably more accurate, is get that receiving core a little bit down. You'll probably get a more accurate grade. But I still think the 49ers, they showed some good stuff against the Rams last week. There's no denying that. And number 13, you have the Minnesota Vikings, who have some zeros here in the running game and also in the offensive line. But, their quarterback play is tier 1 currently. PFF loves Kirk Cousins. In fact, I think Kirk Cousins might be number 1 overall, if I understand correctly. He's played good, though. Is it best quarterback in football? Probably not. But again, this season has been a bit odd. Cousins has played very well. I don't deny that whatsoever. Good receiving core as well. They should use it more. Again, they're built on to run, despite the fact that they have a tier 1 quarterback, tier 2 receivers, and then tier 5 offensive line and tier 5 running back room. And then on defense has played solid. This is a team that's underperformed, but not as dramatically now that they did get a win. It's a good team. It's just the coaching is an issue with Minnesota, in my opinion. All right, next 4 here. Bit of a surprise to see Arizona drop this much, but again, keep in mind a big chunk of it is injuries, right? And especially that quarterback situation where they went from tier 1 to tier 2, you lose over a win because of that. So their 10.46 projected wins is a little bit light because of that, whereas obviously when Kyler comes back, you're looking at a much higher situation. They would actually, I believe, be 4th if they had a tier 1 quarterback grade. So keep that in mind. Receiving room, tier 1, that still checks out. They don't run the ball as well as the numbers would suggest. That is fair. A lot of their running game has come from teams trying to make sure they stop the pass. Against Arizona playing cover 2, it gets you one less guy in the box, which allows you to run the ball better. They cover very well, which, again, that's the biggest surprise of this season, in my opinion, is the Cardinals' secondary. Still don't stop the run, though. That is a bit of an issue for Arizona, but there's still a lot to like. I like the Cardinals a lot. Number 11, the Las Vegas Raiders. They have a horrible offensive line. They need to abandon the run. But, good receiving core. They have them as tier 1. That seems a bit high, but it is a good receiving core. Tier 2 quarterback for Carr. I think that's fair. He got off to that, super hot start, but he's still a very good quarterback, even with a couple down games. Part of it is, again, there's weirdness going on with the Raiders. They have some talent on defense. Having that performance against Kansas City, it's going to hurt you some. But they're still a team that, they've earned 5.6 wins and have 5 wins. So they're still on the right track here, I think, according to these numbers. Number 10, the Dallas Cowboys, who they're a team that some people maybe would have a lot higher. Great receiving core, tier 2 quarterback play. I think that's fair with Prescott, a tier 1 offensive line. They're a team that has had tier 1 running games so far this season. Don't currently have it, so that's interesting to note. But again, if you feel they deserve it, then just tack on 2 wins to their win total, which would put them, that would be just shy of 13 wins. That would put them at 3rd best in football, according to this system. They're a team that this chart says has overperformed. I think that's probably fair. Listen, I don't know how often guys are going to throw the ball directly to Trayvon Diggs. I don't know how much that's going to continue to happen. But that being said, they're still a very good team, 5.8, top 10. And there's a lot of teams bunched up kind of in this, really in the 14 through 4 range. There's 10 teams that or I guess that'd be 11 teams who are within 1.1 win of each other. So a lot of teams really bunched up here. Number 9, the Titans. Hey, give Ryan Tannehill credit. PFF's giving him a tier 1 quarterback grade. And it really is incredible with the Titans. I mean, you see how Derrick Henry gets hurt. Julio Jones gets hurt. They're still finding ways to move the ball. Maybe it's not going as smoothly. Obviously, it can't. But they're still doing stuff well. There's not a ton else to love about this team except for the coverage. And I know people give all the credit to the pass rush, but the coverage has set up a lot of those pressures. It really has. So I think that this is fair. I think the Titans they're kind of just a weirdly built team currently. They were built around Derrick Henry. He goes down, so they're kind of trying to build on the fly. Doing an okay job of it. We'll see how they continue. All right, so next 4, we're going to have some surprises here. In fact, there's going to be a lot of surprises from here on out, but that's kind of what makes this fun. And like I always say, every time there's surprises, it usually, I feel like way more often than not, the algorithm has been closer to correct than my gut feeling and my gut reaction. So the Browns at 8, that's not a massive surprise. Again, keep in mind, 4 through 14 are all right around each other, so don't freak out too much about the actual placement. It's very close. But for Cleveland, I mean, again, Mayfield's just been so inconsistent. The tier 3 quarterback play, that's really, it's fair, but it's been in a weird way. We kind of expected him to be consistently solid. He's been inconsistently great or terrible. Really good offensive line. Coverage is still very good. I do think a lot of that Patriots game was a bit fluky. Like, I don't think that they're going to, have that insane difference on third down percentage ever again. I mean, that's one of the biggest lopsided third down percentages in any game ever. Obviously, a lot of that is skill, but there is some flukiness to it, right? Where, maybe you get a drop pass on third down instead of on first down. It changes things. So that's where the Browns are currently at. They're a team that has underperformed the algorithm so far. Another team that's massively underperformed the algorithm, the Eagles, by 2.6 wins have underperformed. They're a 6.6 wins earned team, only won 4 games. And you look down the line, and the first thing that jumps out at you is the tier 1 running game, which they haven't ran the ball as much, so that's kind of part of what allows it to do better. So if you don't believe they're tier 1, you think they're actually like tier 2, you can take a couple wins off and they'll drop, sort of doing to mediocre range, which probably feels a bit better, but I also don't know if that's totally fair to do. Their running game has been doing a very good job, and now they've ran the ball more, they kind of do look like a good team. Is it 11.25 good? Probably not, but then again, you look down the list, well, what do you disagree with? Tier 3 quarterback for Hurts, that checks out. Tier 2 offensive line, yeah, sure, I like that. Tier 3 wide receiving room, sure, I like that as well. And then their defense, I mean, maybe coverage at tier 3 is a bit high, but it's not that high, and they rush the passer well. So there's a lot of stuff to like about this Eagles team, and so I do think that, like, looking at it, it does kind of make some sense. I don't totally disagree, but they've also been very inconsistent, really starting with the quarterback play. Hurts has been very inconsistent. But, when he's good, he's good. Speaking of good, number 5 and 6 actually tied. I accidentally put them as 5 and 6 just, when I was putting this together. You can call me a homer. I gave the Bucs the nod, even though they had the exact same total win projection through 17. But let's start with the Green Bay Packers. They, still tier 3 quarterback play from Rodgers. Obviously, the Jordan Love game is still included in that, and the week 1 game against the Saints. I also just think that they haven't asked Rodgers to do a ton this season. It's been a very real thing. Didn't have his best game against Seattle either, but was rusty. Tier 1 running game, like, that's been a big deal for the Packers. Also, tier 1 coverage unit, even without Jair Alexander through a big chunk of it. Made a video kind of breaking that down. An element of it, it's good coaching has definitely factored in. So this is a team that has overperformed their expected win total so far. They're expected 6.7. They currently have 8, which is more than that, but it's not a giant leap. And again, with good coaching, you can kind of explain that one a little bit. I know that you're going to kind of maybe wonder, wait, how are they tied with the Buccaneers in total if they have 0.7 extra wins earned? They played one more game. That's how that works. Number 5, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who Tom Brady's getting way too much criticism for that loss. He had a couple bad plays. For the most part, he was fine. I don't put it on him, even though Bruce Arians did for some reason. That was odd. Tier 2 offensive line, tier 2 wide receiving room. That's actually underperformed, I think, preseason expectations. The real issue with Tampa Bay has been their defense, but you hope that as they get healthier, their coverage can get better than tier 3. They've been very inconsistent as well, I think largely due to, injuries. So I think the Buccaneers are still a good team. I think they're fine. All right, top 4. And at number 4, and you're going to see some real surprise in number 1, but we'll get into that in a second. Number 4 now, so the Cincinnati Bengals, another surprise, but again, keep in mind, they're barely ahead of Tampa Bay. Quite frankly, they're not that far ahead of like a team that's at number 14. The 49ers had 10.4 wins. The Bengals have 11.49 wins. So, like I said, they're within 1.1 win of each other, even though they're 11 spots apart. So what's going to happen here, Cincinnati Bengals, tier 1 quarterback play, I think a big chunk of it is just there hasn't really been 5 tier 1 quarterbacks this year, so some tier 2 quarterbacks have kind of gotten pushed into that role. right? And you're going to see it again with number 1. So that's a big aspect of it. The receiving core has played very well. And then you have some other stuff across the board. So it's really that, tier 1 quarterback play, which they probably haven't actually earned, which kind of creates a bit of a wonkiness. But he's still I think tier 2 is totally, you can argue that for Joe Burrow. And that puts you still at a playoff team. They're currently at 11.49 total wins per 17. Overperformed a little bit, but that's probably due to the tier 1 quarterback thing. Number 3, the Los Angeles Rams right here, who just have a lot of stuff across the board, right? Tier 1 offensive line, only tier 3 quarterback play, but then tier 2 wide receiver play. You then have tier 1 run defense, you have tier 2 coverage, and tier 1 pass rush. So, and not to mention tier 1 kicking. So you have a lot of good stuff across the board. Even, running game gets you that, tier 2 point total. So, and if Matt Stafford starts playing at least a tier 2 quarterback, which I think I would probably argue he's been tier 2. He hasn't been tier 1, but I would probably say tier 2. That can make him even higher, which would put them, at least close to Buffalo at number 2, which this algorithm has actually hated early on, which I do think was fair because they played bad early on, right? They had a couple bad weeks. Since then, they've continued to improve. Although the one thing that I still keep saying is, I don't know why Buffalo is getting credit for a tier 1 running game. I haven't understood that basically this entire time. I think the running game's been fine, but it hasn't been tier 1. That's silly. And clearly the point of tier 1 is that usually teams have to, make a strong effort to stop the run. Teams are not doing that against Buffalo. So shave 2 wins off there for sure. But I think you could also add some stuff with the quarterback play, which is probably tier 1, not tier 2. So that factors in as well. So kind of maybe shave just half a win off of it. So they're still probably here at number 2. Really good coverage. Their defense has been awesome so far. And the receiving core has played a lot better. Offensive lines continue to play better. The Bills are very good. Not really a surprise, but according to this list, what is a surprise is a team that has had the biggest overperformance / underperformance of this entire show so far, of this entire series so far. Despite only having 6 wins, they've currently earned 9.4 wins in a 10-game sample size so far. On pace for 16 wins is the New England Patriots. So you're clearly thinking, what are you talking about? This makes 0 sense. Well, let's take a step back and let's actually examine how the hell this has come to be. So one thing worth noting is, okay, let's just go through the line. Tier 2 offensive line, sure, fine. I would maybe put it at tier 3, but fine, I'll give you tier 2. Quarterback play tier 1. It hasn't been tier 1, but this is like what we talked about, where there haven't been 5 tier 1 quarterbacks. So that probably should be a bit lower, but it still is very good. Tier 1 receiving game play. Again, not where I would have it. I'm just going to say that. So you knock those couple of things off, and you're looking at knocking maybe 2.5 wins off the total. However, that still puts you at 13.5 wins. And like I said, I think the Bills probably have knocked off about half a win as well. We're still looking at what's pretty close to an even matchup for Patriots and Bills with the best team in football. So there you go. I mean, listen, the Patriots are good. What do I make of this? I don't know if I would say that they're the best team in football, but really, New England has been one of those teams that's consistently done, much better on this algorithm than I would have had them. If you are someone who thinks this is crazy, I'm just letting you know that people thought it was crazy when they said the Patriots were a playoff team when they were 2-4. So I get it. But again, part of it too might just be, listen, they got to blow out the Jets a couple times. They blew out the Browns. Like I said, that game was a bit fluky. They blew out the Panthers. So you get a few blowouts in there that's going to make things easier. But again, part of it too is they've blown out those teams. So wild stuff. That's this show. Hope you guys enjoyed the power rankings. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.